It's funny. One night you go to bed, and when you wake up, everything is different. Now Brian's acting a little peculiar. Something's gotten into him. Something very,
I know something's happened to you.
very
How is that?
hungry.
You can't keep killing people every time you're hungry.
Brain damage.
And we're back again. Happy Halloween, everybody. Now, if you want to ask me what got me through this pandemic as far as the quarantine, it's because I subscribed to Shudder, and because I subscribed to Shudder, I got to watch Joe Bob's Last Drive-In, and on that show, I watched the movie that we're talking about today. The movie is Brain Damage. Last year, we spotlighted Frankenhooker, which was also directed by Frank Henenlotter, and I absolutely adored that movie. And when I saw Brain Damage, I fell madly in love with this movie, and now I am giving it to you, David. And after Butt Boy, I think it's safe to say this was tame by comparison. Would you agree?
Oh, yes, definitely. The movie was far, far better than it had any right to be. I really, really enjoyed it. Reminds me a little bit of, it's got a Little Shop of Horrors vibe. And I mean that in the nicest way possible.
Yeah, that honestly, you're talking about original Little Shop of Horrors, right?
Yeah.
Like the original, yeah.
The special effects were, for 1988, extremely good. A little cheesy, but I think that was deliberate.
Actually, Frank Henenlotter, his impetus behind making this movie, first of all, he always wanted to do a Faustian story. So it's actually very apt that you did a Little Shop of Horrors comparison. He always wanted
I got serious Audrey 2 vibes the minute he opened his mouth.
Hi.
So he always wanted to do a Faustian story. He always wanted to do a deal with the devil story. But also, Frank Henenlotter, around the time he came up with the idea for this, he was just getting over cocaine addiction. So he wrote this movie as a parallel to his experiences trying to get over cocaine usage. I've seen so many movies about addiction. I mean, of course, one of my favorites is Trainspotting. And of course, Requiem for a Dream is one of the best, but Brain Damage is able to it goes away to show how horrifying the exchange is to get this sublime high, but unfortunately coming at such a grievous cost.
Yeah. Guy who played Elmer.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. That is actually one of the original horror hosts, John Zachary. The cool ghoul.
I've heard his name. I've heard his voice before, but I couldn't place it.
Yeah, John Zachary, the cool ghoul. That's who it is.
Okay.
Yeah, he's basically without him, we wouldn't have had people like Elvira, Vampira. I think he preceded Vampira.
I really liked how the filmmaker really showed the gritty, real New York, particularly for the 80s. That club that he goes to brought back memories.
Have you been to New York during that time?
No.
Oh.
But I grew up in. I was 18 in 1988. It's just, trust me, this brought memories back.
One of the reasons why I love Frank Henenlotter as a filmmaker is that when you got filmmakers like Martin Scorsese or Woody Allen who show off or try to come up with some kind of like caricature version of New York, Frank Henenlotter has absolutely no pretense about that. He will show off the ugly side of it, the dirty, filthy, sordid side of it. And it's prevalent in all of his flagship movies, from Basket Case to this one to Frankenhooker. He has no problem showing off the absolute filthy side of it.
For a horror flick that's about a brain-eating parasite, it had a lot of realism, if that makes any freaking sense.
Now, for those who are watching this without any kind of context, Brain Damage tells the story of this parasite, this worm-like parasite named Elmer.
Not Elmer. Aylmer. Aylmer. An old English word meaning the awe-inspiring famous one.
In the beginning, you don't know much about him, but he ends up latching on to this kid named Brian, and he starts having these euphoric hallucinations. And once he makes the acquaintance of Aylmer and comes to the realization that it's this little parasite that's causing these beautiful hallucinations, he is on board with it until he finds out that in order for him to get these hallucinations, he's got to give Elmer what he wants. And unfortunately, the thing that Elmer wants is to consume brains. Now, prior to latching on to Brian, he was with this older couple who was only giving him animal brains, keeping him weak. But fortunately, Brian's been giving him human brains, making him stronger.
What are you doing? Is he okay?
Not bad. A bit underdone.
He wants that high so bad. And thus you've got this thing where he's got to have the juice, but it means giving him human brains. Thus, this incredible parallel about addiction, which the movie vividly portrays. This movie actually takes the time to give you the full info dump of the history of Elmer.
The Elmer's origins can be traced back to the Fourth Crusade, where he was snatched from the Emperor Alexius during the sack of Byzantium in 1203.
Which I know you didn't expect. You didn't expect that all of a sudden, oh my God, this thing has a really long, substantial history going all the way back like 1,000 years. And the fact that the movie took the time to give you that info dump is astonishing. Most movies of this ilk would never bother with that.
Or they save it to like the third or fourth movie.
Yeah. In this case, they just give it to you right now, which says that Frank Henenlotter only intended this to have just like one movie.
Yeah.
Never intended to have a sequel or anything like that.
Well, and I wish a lot more horror filmmakers did that, to be honest with you. There are many times when a story is told very, very well, and I don't need to know everything. Particularly with horror. The more you know about whatever it is, the less scary it is.
The one good thing about Frank Henenlotter is that I don't think any of his movies were ever intended to be scary, just more uncomfortable. Just more like makes you kind of feel a way that makes you want to avoid the way of life that the characters portrayed herein. This movie actually has a whole segment where Brian actually goes through a whole trial to try and kick Elmer from his system. He actually tries to go, quit cold turkey, but then you see this horrifying series of hallucinations where he's going through withdrawal symptoms, and it's nasty.
There's one scene there, it wasn't exactly uncomfortable, but I was shocked by it.
Yeah.
In the sense of that they did that in 1988. There is a, I'm not sure how much I can tell.
Go ahead.
Is why not? He hooks up with a girl, and they go out into the alley. They go to the alley. Yeah, I cannot form words today. And she decides to perform oral sex on him, and the parasite is currently in his underwear and jumps down her throat, and they mimic fellatio, and I'm like, in 1988 they did that? I mean, put it this way, I remember the movie they came out with one of the Jacks, I think it wasn't Janet, it almost got an X rating because it had a mimicked fellatio scene in it.
Actually, no, it's funny you address the scene because, it was one of the scenes that I think gave the film an X rating prior to, and I think he had to cut it out to get it an R rating so he can get mass distribution. But then later on, he was able to cut it back in when things kind of loosened up a bit more. But yeah, that was a scene that caused a pretty major stir.
Oh, I could believe it. I could totally believe it.
Yeah.
I mean,
I just admired the bravery of him as a filmmaker. It's like when he wants to show something nasty, he'll show it, but somehow he's always able to show it in a way that makes it darkly humorous and makes it stand out in your brain because it's the audacity of what he's willing to do is this kind of thing that you're not comfortable with. And I was just when I initially saw this movie, I was so blown away by the fact that he was a filmmaker that was so daring to just go there. And
I agree. I absolutely agree.
The fact that he was so vivid in his portrayal of showing like how dependent and how almost crazed you become in the pursuit of the next high. Henenlotter, as far as his writing and his direction, is one thing, but I also got to give props to Rick Herbst, the actor who plays Brian. His performance is through the damn roof. I mean, in the history of actors playing addicts, he's probably one of my easily jumps into my top 5 in his performance.
Yes, very much so.
Yeah. And
yeah, watching him stumble around, I mean, he really looked dope sick.
Yeah, I like that term. I'm going to use that later on.
Requiem. Requiem for a Dream.
I like that. It says a lot when an actor who is, as attractive as Rick Herbst is, the fact that he was willing to make himself look so horrible and dirty and sweaty.
It was far, far, far better than any right to be. I really didn't expect to walk out of a movie like this thinking. Usually when I go see a horror, it's like, okay, yeah, pretty, ooh, gross, pretty, you know what I mean.
Yeah.
To me, most of the best horror tends to be stuff that makes you think. The Purge.
Yeah.
I don't think The Purge is horror. I think The Purge is social commentary.
Yeah.
This guy's horror.
The Purge, The Stuff, of course, as we jumped into that. I agree with you 100%. The best horror I've ever encountered, it always has a strong satirical slant. And I think the reason, and that's why I fell madly in love with this movie, was because I wasn't expecting such a level of profundity and for the film to be so vivid in its portrayal of addiction, and to do it with this very eloquent parasite.
This is the start of your new life, Brian. A life without worry or pain or loneliness. A life filled instead with colors and music and euphoria.
And admittedly, now that's another triumph of this movie. When you see Elmer at first glance, when you see what he looks like, you expect him to sound like a gremlin. You expect him to go like,
yeah.
You're right. The second I heard him speak like this academic, I immediately knew this movie was on another level, because I was not expecting this little parasite to have the wit and wisdom. I want to see this Elmer in the same room with the brain gremlin from Gremlins 2 and have this wonderful, eloquent conversation, because I think the two of them combined would cause loads of chaos.
Well, you mentioned Faustian bargains. So if you take that another step further, think of him as Satan or the devil, and yeah, of course, he's going to be very polite, very kind, very, hey, I got something you want? You just give me what I want, I'll make you happy. You have everything you want, just give me one little thing.
And I suspect that because when you meet Elmer and you hear him, it makes all the horrible things he does when it comes to eating people's brains, it really hits home why it's hilarious to watch. I mean, first off, it's hilarious watching this little worm-like thing jumping on people's heads, and some really great low-budget prosthetic effects to see them, like when you hear people go, in any movie, when the killer in question is always like an intelligent person, like with well-spoken, it's always hilarious hearing that, and then all of a sudden seeing them doing these awful things, because it's such a wonderful juxtaposition from what you would expect. I mean, because prior to the point when you hear him speak, you haven't seen what he actually does, and when you see him gnaw into the brain of a security guard, then all of a sudden the game has changed.
Yeah. And he doesn't, and I like the fact that the main character didn't realize what was happening until after it already happened a couple of times, and he's like, yeah, that's what I do.
Part of my talent, Brian, is to spare you any unpleasantness.
Yeah, but when it comes to blood in my underwear, I want to know how it got there.
and the fact that he said, okay, no, this absolutely cannot happen. No. And then he realizes, no, I don't have a choice.
And he makes a valiant attempt to try and kick the habit. But when he relapses, you pretty much are resigned to the fact that he has no control over it from then on in. And everything he does afterwards, you can't say you blame him at all, because unfortunately he's under the powerful thrall of this very persuasive little demon.
Well, this addiction.
Especially Trainspotting, the main character actually kicks the habit, whereas in Brain Damage, not only does he not kick the habit, he goes even deeper, and even worse, the movie ends and again, the great thing about Frank Henenlotter, all of his movies always end on the dark note. It becomes something of a Twilight Zone ending, or a Tales from the Crypt ending, where ultimately
Black Mirror, but yeah.
Or Black Mirror, yes, it's another. But either way, it all comes down to leading to the moral that teaches the audience the prime lesson. But Henenlotter did that in Basket Case, this one, and Frankenhooker. They all end on that note that leaves you with the with a moral that is made clear and is made absolutely, there's no mistake about what the filmmaker's intention is. And that's what he does. And as much as I love Basket Case, and much as I love Frankenhooker, I think he does it the best here, because given the fact that Frank Henenlotter was a recovering addict, I feel like this was the one he put the most effort into showing the horrors of what he went through.
I can tell you, I will be looking up his other films now.
I've seen a lot of great horror movies on Shudder. I've watched a lot of wonderful giallos from Dario Argento. I still to this day have not seen films that have excited me as the level of the films of Frank Henenlotter. So this is why I love this movie. I'm so happy that you loved it too.
I will recommend his films at this point, sight unseen. I strongly recommend Brain Damage. It was, like I said, it's way, 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 way better than it is Any Right to Be, because I was really expecting pure schlock.
and we do love schlock at the
I do love schlock, but yeah,
we do love schlock at Narcotic Casserole. But this one, and you would expect it at the first go round, but then it hits you like a sledgehammer with its actual intention, and then it just pun partially intended, or okay, fucking full load intended, blows your damn mind with with its actual intention, and then all of a sudden you're caught up in its spell. And I fell madly in love with it. I bought it on Blu-ray immediately because,
and of course it was Arrow.
Huh?
I noticed it was an Arrow production.
Yeah, definitely the Blu-ray. Yeah, it is available on Blu-ray. It's also available on Shudder. I would strongly recommend watching it on Shudder, especially through Joe Bob's Last Drive-In. If you can't get the opportunity, get it on Arrow Blu-ray. The features on it are outstanding. So you will definitely get your money's worth, no matter what route you take in order to watch it. So definitely.
For what it's worth, the way I watched it, I'll just mention it. It's a streaming service called Canopy. Your local library might have it. If your local library does not have it, convince your local library to get it. It is a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful streaming service. They have a Criterion Collections section. It's great and well worth every penny, which is nothing because it's from your local library.
And if it means that people are going to get a chance to see a whole bunch of the delicacies that we have shown before and currently on this show, take that opportunity. So in the meantime, do you agree? Do you disagree? If you disagree, I have nothing but pity for you. And in the meantime, for more addictive content on Narcotic Casserole, simply like, share, subscribe, click. Thou shalt be served, and happy Halloween.
What makes a lady of A go out on the loose? Why does a gander meander in search of a goose?